What is this old thing? Ooh, I love it. You're looking a bit worse for wear, but I think we can do something about that. Look at you. Since no one is really interested in current and modern computers, I figured that I would do something that I've been kind of putting off for years and restoring this old Pentium-based system that was donated to me a couple of years ago. Now, before this morning, I had no idea if this even powered on or if any of the hardware inside of this thing worked at all. What I wanted to do is take you guys along for the journey with me and restore this to its former glory as a mid-90s gaming powerhouse with a few little modern bits of hardware and some bits of hardware that are also period correct to make this the beastiest gaming computer you probably could have owned. Now, we've done a water-cooled Pentium 2 build before on the channel, but this system predates most things like USB. We're gonna turn this thing on and we're gonna see if it explodes and if we're going to be wasting our time with making a series like this. But if you're seeing this video, then that means the smoke test was successful. Wow, YouTube is like a time machine. But I'm lucky enough to have this monitor here. This monitor is a modern-ish monitor. It's a 4K monitor, but it has DVI input, VGA input, HDMI, DisplayPort, all of that jazz in one monitor, which is why I keep this around. Almost every PC from most generations over the last 30 or so years can plug directly into that monitor and we can see if it works. So let's do the smoke test. Are you ready? Are you ready, ladies and gents? Let's see if this thing powers up. And that is very, very loud. We're gonna have to do something about that. There's the power supply, but yeah, it's posting. What do we got? I'll have to speak over the sound of this power supply, but it appears we've got a Pentium MMX at 166 megahertz with 64 megabytes of RAM. Megabytes of RAM. There's two drives in here by the appearance as well. There's a Master drive, a Quantum Fireball. There's a CD-ROM drive as well. It's nice and loud CD-ROM drive there. But as you can see, the first thing you're noticing is keyboard error, no keyboard present. If you're not acquainted with this older hardware in the time before USB, you can't just plug any old keyboard or any old mouse into these systems and expect them to work. There's a few things that you actually have to take into account with these older systems. So I've got this, right? I bought this back in 2018 when I started planning for this project. It's been that long, and it's an AT to PS2 keyboard adapter. Now, you would think that, oh, can't you use one of those PS2 to USB adapters and then plug in any old USB keyboard and it's gonna work on your old PC? No, because most modern keyboards don't support the PS2 protocol. So I actually need to get my hands on either an AT keyboard or a PS2 keyboard, preferably a PS2 keyboard for the purposes of this, because they're a bit more modern, probably a lot easier to come by, and I can probably either buy a new old stock one, a new one, because they still do manufacture them in some capacity. This is kind of in that weird generation between generations where, you know, technology was somewhat emerging. Say for instance, in 1998, when Pentium 2s and that kind of stuff started to become more widely used and accessible, and around 99, USB started to become a thing, but this is just on the cusp before all of that. So yeah, just some interesting tidbits I thought I'd share with you guys. So because we can't plug in a keyboard to even get into the BIOS and poke around the system and see if it boots, we're gonna have to do something else. And what we're going to do is we're gonna clean it up. This system came to me in this exact state. I haven't cleaned it. It's sat on a shelf for years. You would have spotted it in the background in videos sitting on top of the shelf for years, but there's some things like floppy drives not attached properly. As you heard, the CD-ROM drive is quite loud, but you know, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here if you haven't seen a PC from this period. Now, it's gonna need some fixing. There's like a latch or two that needs to be rebent, and let's pull off the case. This is how PC cases used to come off back in the day. One thing I gotta say from PCs from this era, and it's probably the first thing most of you guys are noticing, is that cable management wasn't a thing, and airflow wasn't really a thing in the same way. There was no intake fans. It didn't need that because the componentry in here doesn't get hot enough to really warrant any of that stuff. So we've got our IDE and floppy cables just all over the place. To be honest, this is quite a clean build for something from this era. There's a few little things that we started to do when we were case modding in the late 90s that made some of this cleaner, but this one here in particular is, for everything that I can see, quite clean. We'll start off with pulling out the network card. This does actually have a network card in here. So this looks to be a 100 meg network card. I don't even know the brand or anything of any of the hardware that's in here. None of the brands, so we'll check it out together. This looks like an old 3com network card, 100 meg card. This looks like one of the more popular 3com cards from back in the day. So, you know, I think this computer in a previous life was a DNS server actually. So I'm guessing that there's Linux running on this thing, and really, really old Linux. So we'll find that out once we get the keyboard and everything working on here. But yeah, in these days as well, GPUs in the way that you know them today also were not a thing. But we'll pull out the video card. It's a 2D card. I'm gonna guess and say this is an S3 Verge because that was like the most popular card back then. So let's flip it over and find out. I was wrong. It's actually an S3 Trio 64. Pretty close to the S3 Verge. A very, very common video card from the era. So there you go. And for some peculiar reason, this PC has a sound card. Now I can see what it is. All the retro people out there who are into retro computing will know that this sound card here is one of the worst sound cards from the era. But we're gonna pull it out. Doesn't look like the anything's been pulled out of one of these ISA slots in a very long time. Oh, okay. This is one of the most notoriously garbage sound cards of the era. It's the Vibra 16, and this is the CT2800 model. These things are just not that good. By the looks of it, it looks like it's either an OPL2 or an OPL3. Now, usually with these old creative cards, they modified the OPL chips and they were like creative branded. This one right here is Yamaha branded, so some interesting stuff here. Obviously, when we get the system up and running, this is the card I'm going to use because I want to test it. I just noticed something. The CD audio cable was plugged into itself. Let's get the CD-ROM drive out. I didn't build this. It would have been a lot nicer if I did, but we're going to make this really nice, actually. Like, I've been meaning to do this for years. It's been sitting here for a long time. Okay. Manufacturing date of July 1997. This is old. This is probably older, Claire, than quite a few of our viewers. Just this CD-ROM drive here. Crazy, right? This poor floppy drive isn't even attached, or if it is, it's got one screw attaching it. I think there's a single screw holding in the floppy drive. We're pulling everything out because we want to clean it. The hard drives are probably easier to remove once we've pulled out the motherboard, but let me show you a trick from days gone by of the way you used to pull out your motherboard back in the day. This is excellent, right? This is so much easier. They traditionally have one screw on the bottom of the case that holds in the bottom of the motherboard tray, and then there's two screws back here. And check this out, right, ladies and gents, check this out. Right, with a little bit of luck. I didn't take out any of the extra expansion slot stuff, but okay, this is just for science to show you guys some stuff. You slide it forward, and then we can quite literally put the board and drop it out like that. Now I'm gonna take a couple of photos of this stuff quickly just to make sure that I plug everything in back in the right way. Even though it's labeled, sometimes these things can be quite finicky. Serial and parallel. Unplug the PS2 header. and the power connectors for the motherboard. Notice how it doesn't use ATX power? This is pre-soft power even. So, you know, just lift these up. The trick to these is black faces black, right? That's it. And we unplug the CPU collar. Look how tiny it is. It's so cute. Using my most hated thing in the world, Molex. We're not gonna have to replace anything like this because you see, the heatsink is built straight onto the CPU itself, not even an IHS. And ladies and gents, the motherboard is out. 2 hard drives in a system like this for the era was quite unusual. It's not something you'd see every day. Now, I know a bit of the history of this. This was donated to us by a friend of ours who was decommissioning a bunch of servers and stuff, and the label on this said that this was running some type of DNS server. I kind of want to know what's on the drives. I'm hoping there's something juicy on here, which we'll find out another day. I can image these drives, mind you, off another machine I've got, but we won't go down that path today, but we'll pull the drives out and just see what we're dealing with here. This Maxtor drive is a 4 GB hard drive. This was huge in its day, like absolutely huge. 4 gigs now is like nothing. You get flash drives from the supermarket, which are 16 gigs for like $3. And this thing would have cost a mint back in the day. Out comes the Quantum Fireball. I used to love the name of these. I had some scuzzy ones of these back in the day as well. I'm gonna take a bit of a stab in the dark here with this drive, and given like just little things I know about owning quantum drives back in the day, I'm gonna say, given the period of this computer, probably between a 500 meg to a 2 gig Quantum Fireball, or somewhere in the middle. Could be wrong, probably not, but yeah, anywhere from 500 to 2 gig that this one will actually be. All right, I'm gonna disassemble the rest of this and then we're gonna prep it for cleaning. So time to speed it all up because I don't have much more to say about the rest of this stuff. I'm not even gonna bother dusting the inside of this. We're just gonna literally just spray a whole bunch of cleaning stuff all over it, and we're just gonna wipe it out because it's really not that bad. It looked worse than it was, but it's really not. Now, I just noticed I forgot to remove those, so let's quickly pull those out before someone on the internet roasts me for forgetting about taking those out. Alrighty, here we go. You guys wanna watch me clean out some old computers? There is a little bit of rust in here, but it's really not too bad. One thing to be aware of when you're kind of working with these older PCs as well is the manufacturing process for a lot of these cases wasn't as refined as they are now, so they can be very sharp. I might end up like going ahead and bathing all of this stuff just to get all of everything out, but this is already coming out much nicer. Now, again, this isn't supposed to be a how-to cleaning guide, and given like what I know and the reactions we got from the last cleaning video, you know, people forget that a lot of the things that you see that I do here is purely for entertainment purposes. And a lot of the stuff I'll do off camera too. Like a lot of the stuff I've already done off camera that you guys haven't seen. The main thing that we're gonna have a problem with, I think, is the front panel, which we could probably make it look pretty clean too. I've bathed the frame of the case already. That I did that off camera because I don't really want to take the camera gear and everything into the bathroom, in the shower and everything. So that happened. But what I'm gonna do is gonna clean up the front of the case here. The problem is I really just want to keep this original Pentium badge. I don't want to take it off. So I'm gonna clean around it. So I'm gonna use a magic eraser. These work pretty well for these old things too, if you don't want to retro bright it. It is a little bit abrasive. It's not too bad, but you know, we should be able to get most of the old blemishes off and kind of get it back to its original sheen. Obviously there's a few things that we won't be able to clean up, and you can already see that, well, pull you out, you can already see that it is cleaning up very, very nicely. This is looking pretty fantastic. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty happy about this. This thing's gonna look really nice. I'm feeling bad about scrubbing the Pentium badge. It's already kind of festy and worn out, but I kind of want to leave it in its original state, because then you know it's old, you know? Some things are gonna stay original. I just don't want the original dirt on here at all. Ah, this is looking great. Off camera, I went and cleaned this all up nicely, and I mean, it was a pretty quick job, and it looks almost new. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna see if I can find a new Pentium badge on eBay or something like that to replace it. I'm gonna guess the original ones, these metal ones, are gonna go for a bit of money because they're now collector's items. So I'd rather a genuine one as well, but this is looking pretty great. I'm happy with the outcome of that. I couldn't find any information on this motherboard specifically, but I decided to pull it off the tray and see if there's some more info on the back side of the board, because boards used to do that back in the day. So we'll just have a bit of a squeeze to see what the story is. See if we can find out some information about it. Now there is a bit of dust behind this, which I'm gonna clean as well, but I am curious to know what specific board this is. But yeah, it doesn't appear to have any indication of who makes this board, but yeah, that's really odd. I mean, not a lot we can do about that. All we can say for sure is that this is a socket 7 board. This might actually be some type of Intel OEM board as well, or just an Intel board. Intel used to make their own boards be more available back in the day, not so much now, but a few things that can kind of give you an idea of when this board really came out. So pre-USB, it's got things like an infrared port on it. It's got both SIM and DIMM slots for SD RAM and EDO RAM or EDO RAM, whatever you want to call it. And obviously the socket 7 slot. So I'm going to pull the CPU out of here and I'm going to give the socket a little bit of a clean. You can see there's a bit of dust and stuff around it. So we'll use some IPA. We'll give it a bit of a wipe down. Nothing too involved. Actually, this has a single USB header. I was wrong, right? USB, random. I have no idea what this board is. I'll have to do a bit more digging, but chances are I'll be able to wire up a USB port to this. This just got a little bit more interesting, but yes, this does have a USB port. So this is probably part of the reference USB spec, USB 1.0 before 1.1, given the date of all this hardware, because 1.1 was around August 1998. This is well before 1998, so wow, okay. I'll need to do some more research, find out what the story is with this board, and see if we can actually get some USB working, because if we can get a USB mouse on here, it's gonna be like, it's gonna make my life a whole lot easier. Wiring up USB ports and stuff is very, very easy for me to do, so I should be able to do that. One thing to be aware of with these really old CPU sockets is they can get quite brittle, so it's good to be careful. And the CPU cooler is obviously attached directly to a heatsink on the top, and the pins on these chips bend a whole lot easier. These ones are much better to use as hairbrushes, Claire, because of the spacing between the pins. Like, they feel good. I could brush the cat with this thing, although I suspect that, yeah, no one would be too happy if I did that. For those who've never seen one of these CPUs before, yes, I ended up cutting my finger doing this video. This is what they used to look like. All right, the fan and everything's integrated. I can unclip the fan. The best way to do that is actually have the CPU in the socket to unclip it, so then you're not bending any pins trying to force anything around. So I will be doing that too to clean it out, but first I'm just gonna clean up the socket a little bit. That is grotty, very, very grotty. Luckily, none of the caps on this board are bulging either, so the board seems to be in quite good condition. All right, re-socket the CPU. Gotta hold these down so they don't pop up. Okay, alrighty, let's unclip it. Oh, that was easy. That's not too dirty. I will give it a little bit of a spruce up, but that's not too dirty. Look at this, that tiny fan. It's a little baby. While I'm here, I might as well just pop out this coin cell that's probably been in here for years and years and years. So this is the most ghetto way to do it. Don't do it like I'm doing. And I'll just replace it with random other CR2032 that I've got laying around. Pop it in, and yeah, that should make it so it doesn't tell me that it needs a new battery, because it's got a new battery. There's two things that I'm going to be adding to this to make it a little bit better for retro gaming and to make it easier to just do stuff. The first thing is an IDE to CF adapter. Using compact flash cards on these older systems is much easier than having spinning rust. It makes them quieter. I can pull the CF card out and plug it into a CF reader on any of my computers and copy stuff to it. I don't even really need to have networking on this PC. It will have networking, but I'm just, you know, making it easier for myself. I bought this back in 2018 for this project, so it's been sitting around for ages. And the other thing I'm adding is something that is quite a bit more rare, and that is a Voodoo 2. That's right, 3dfx Voodoo 2. This is the creative version of it. I think this is only a 4 megabyte card, but this thing back in the day to play Quake is the duck's nuts. This is exactly what you wanted. The way this works is it plugs into your 2D card and it passes your 2D card through to this card, and when it switches over to using 3dfx in glide mode or any other mode that's supported, it'll switch over to this and run everything from here. But all the 2D graphics and everything through Windows or whatever OS you're running will run through the other card that you've got in your system, and this will do all of the 3D stuff. 3dfx actually got acquired by NVIDIA. Well, rather the rights to 3dfx got acquired by NVIDIA years and years and years ago. So this is a precursor to all the GPUs that you're familiar with these days. However, one technology that was invented by 3dfx on these cards, if this looks somewhat familiar, it's exactly what you're thinking it is. It's SLI, because these cards were the first to support SLI. So there's a little bit of trivia for you guys. So those are the things I'm adding. But I need to put all of this back together, which I'm going to do tomorrow because a bit of it needs to dry out. So I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Overnight, since you saw the first part of the video, there's been some developments. The first development is this is all clean, it's all dried up, it's ready for all the hardware to go back in. The other development is I found a brand new PS2 keyboard for $10 from a local electronics store, and I ordered it, so that should arrive within the next couple days. The third development is I don't like pulling apart power supplies and changing things in them. There is the risk of death. Even if you haven't turned on the power supply for many years, they can still hold charge. So I was like, you know what, rather than me trying to kill myself, let's find a different solution. So instead of me changing out this loud fan, this is gonna go back in for now because it works. I've actually ordered an ATX to AT harness adapter. I'm going to adapt a more modern power supply, something that is more readily available, to have the AT power connectors on them. So that's the solution. I'm going to put all this back in. Still got a little bit of cleaning to do for all the cards and whatnot. So let's jump in and get this party started on day 2 of whatever this is supposed to be. I will be replacing a bunch of the screws. It does look dirty. I didn't clean the power supply only because it's not going to be in here for very much longer. So I have a whole stack of silver screws and I'm always thinking to myself, I'll never use those silver screws for anything until now. I need to locate a blanking plate for the front panel, which I don't have right now. This came out so nice. I'm very happy with the efforts of this front panel. Probably pull this apart one more time anyway, and we'll give it another once over once we do that too. But this is looking so much cleaner already. I'm so excited, guys. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very excited for this PC. I know I can use things like DOSBox and do it that way. It's just not the same as running it on real hardware. It's just not the same. I don't care what anyone says, it's just not. So I'll pick real hardware any day of the week, even with stuff like my Amiga stuff. Sure, I could emulate it. It is much more enjoyable to do on real hardware. Some of these cards are quite dirty, so I'm using this little brush I've got from an MSI motherboard to just clean them up real quick, and the brush works quite good really, just that scrubbing away some of the dirt. Now I could use a cloth to do it, but this little brush gets into all of the little nooks and crannies on the back, and then once I've loosened the dust up, I just give it a bit of a wipe down and it should be good to go. I'm putting the floppy drive back in for now. As you can see, I've cleaned it up, but all of these beige machines from back in the day, the colors never match up exactly the same. I need to figure out a way to mount this somewhere without it interfering with the rest of the hardware. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I need to find another blanking plate. I've got one somewhere because I'm gonna put the CD-ROM back in. The one that I've got in here, I'm not sure if it works. In fact, I'm not sure any of these drives work at all, but they're going back in for the next video when we can actually test it, and then we'll replace them accordingly. I do have spare floppy drives. I've also got spare CD-ROM drives, so we should be okay. Connecting up the CF to IDE adapter is super easy. I've set it to master mode. I'll prep a compact flash card that I'll basically be able to plug into this thing and it will boot up no problem. But all you do is you just plug it in. Cables only go one way. It's usually the red line facing towards the power or whatever's labeled as the first pin, and it just plugs in like a regular IDE drive. However, instead of using Molex, it uses a floppy power connector to power the adapter, and you just plug in that floppy power connector, we're in business, and then that's it. So instead of using an old loud spinning rush drive, I can just use a compact flash card. I can even use a compact flash card that is an SD to compact adapter as well, which is probably the way that I'll go about it. But yeah, cool little mod that you can make to your retro computers. Very inexpensive. I think this costs like $10 or something like that on eBay many years ago. Probably the same price now. All right, let's put all the cards back in. Probably a good idea to begin to do that. Voodoo 2's going in. We'll put the network card back in for now as well, just in case I want to use it. I do have a gigabit PCI card that would work, but the main problem would probably be to do with availability for drivers of Windows. Linux would be fine, I suspect, but Windows would be much more tricky. And last but not least, that Vibra 16S with the OPL3 can go back in, and this thing will have sound and it will be ready for all of that retro gaming goodness. I'm not gonna mess around too much with the cable management at this point, basically because I still need to pull things in and out, and there's a couple things I wanna test for the next video that's just gonna make the way that this is easier. Plus there's a couple other things I need to do, like swapping out the power supply still in one of the later parts of the series. Right now, this'll turn on and work, hopefully. We'll give it another smoke test after all the work that we did. Everything looks like it should be ready to go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the moment of truth. Time to power up this PC after the clean, after all the new hardware's in, and see if it fires up. It's gonna be loud, but here goes. Are we gonna be in business? Blue means good. All right, so everything seems to be working. I know for a fact with this CF adapter that I've got here and this CF to SD card that I've got in here, it doesn't detect unless I do this. Ready? Check this out. Unplug it, plug it back in, hit reset, and you'll see now that it will actually end up detecting. I'll probably end up using a proper CF card now. All right, the system's up and running. You probably noticed that I found one of the blanking plates I had. What I'm gonna do is I'm either gonna cut out something for the CF to IDE adapter, or I don't know, I don't have a 3D printer. Maybe I can buy another CF to IDE adapter that has something that can go in here. But for now, I kind of don't want to destroy that because that's the only one I've got. I've also picked up this out of our storage. It's a much faster CD-ROM drive. I think this is I'm going to say a 48 speed CD-ROM drive. It's not a burner, it's just a straight CD-ROM drive. I don't need to write media for this. This is just a backup plan. To be honest, everything's going to be on a CF card anyway. There's no real need to have any type of optical media, but it's there for some games I want to play that I've got original copies of that have CD audio, right? Now there are some things that I do want to mess around with and do that. I've also ordered a VGA to HDMI adapter so I can stream retro games once I get this all up and running that's not emulated on real hardware. Because I don't know if you guys know, we have a Twitch channel that I've been streaming on very frequently lately. I'll put a link down below in the description if you guys want to check out one of our streams. But yeah, I want to mess around with some retro stuff on stream too. So if you guys are going to be interested in that, yeah. Sorry that this video has gone on for quite a while. I'm not sure that anyone's actually going to be interested in this, but I'm really excited to get this up and running. I've been planning on getting this PC up and running for about 3 years now, and I woke up yesterday morning and I was in the shower and I was like, you know what? I think it's time to finally get that stuff done. I hunted for all the bits that I bought for it, that through all these random boxes they've been hiding around for ages, and here we are. Everything's up and running. There's a little Raspberry Pi project that allows you to probe PS2 with the GPIO stuff. So I'm gonna do that in the meantime so I can at least get past the BIOS and do some stuff and use a USB keyboard. Not a very good permanent solution, to be honest. Just something to get by, because the PS2 keyboard that I bought for this will be the keyboard that I use for it. Now, we had a few offers for keyboards on Twitter as well. The one that someone posted that was the Dell keyboard, like the beige one. Oh man, I wish I'd saw that before I bought the other one, because that would have been the perfect match for this, but it's okay, it's no problem. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned some stuff about some old hardware, and if you're one of our younger viewers and you haven't seen anything like this, I hope you get excited about this type of stuff. The older people out there who watch our content, I'm sure you'll be very, very familiar with all of this stuff, or maybe you're not, I don't know. But this was really fun for me, and I can't wait to do the next part. The next part will come when I get a collection of more stuff. So I'm not gonna do like one video for every new thing we add. I'm gonna do a video every time there's like a collection of stuff. But I foresee that there's only gonna be one more part to this, because I've ordered a whole bunch of stuff, and maybe there'll be a third part where we'll do all the testing and everything so you guys can see how awesome this thing will be at playing games in Glide, because it's going to be sick. I'm super, super duper keen and excited. Yeah, I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek, we seek, and happy retro gaming. I know I'm going to be happy once this thing gets up and running. Thanks for watching.